Okay, you've got to ask yourself, is it really worth it? 4:30 in the morning on a Sunday, 29 degrees outside, stiff wind coming out of the north. Yeah, I'd probably think it's worth it. Gonna fire up the Yoder Wichita today, and we're gonna cook a couple nice pieces of meat. I'm starting with the worst job in the world, or at least when it comes to barbecue, and that's cleaning out the ash. Just don't know where to put this at a lot of times. I wish I had a purpose for it. Right now it just finds its way in the bucket and probably likely somewhere in the woods. But if anybody has any ideas of what I should do with this, leave it in the comments. So I'm starting with 8 splits of wood. A split is about 1/3 the size of a log that you would use in a fireplace. So about 3 fireplace logs here. I always start kind of the same way. I start with these little instant fire things. You can get them on Amazon. Put a link in the description. And then I use that small little butane torch that my dad gave me several years ago. It seems to work pretty good, especially in windy conditions. Now the whole reason why I start with so much wood in the beginning is because I'm trying to get a base of coals in the grill. The grill's pretty cold right now. It's 1/4-inch steel. It takes a little bit to warm it up. So, you know, eight splits seems to get enough coals in it to get the temperature up to about 300. I like to operate it around 250 during the cook, but it flexes anywhere between 200 to 300 depending on what I'm doing and if I'm paying attention to the fire. Like in my other video, show you here, I'm using the fat that's collected from the previous cooks, to accelerate this fire a little bit. It's a great starter. It's basically starts a grease fire. It's a good base of coals for me to start this cook. Man, it was cold, especially windy. So let's head inside and let's get this meat ready as the grill's starting to warm up. Now when I use the Yoder, the grill's huge and it does take some fuel to run it. So, probably, 8-9 hour cook, you're probably looking at using about 25 splits to 30 splits of wood. So if I can do, a couple pieces of meat and maybe share some with family members, I'm always going to do that. It just makes sense. If I got to run the grill for a little bit, I might as well run it with as much meat as possible. Well, not as much meat as possible because I can really put a lot of meat on it, but at least more than one piece, and then just share it with nearby family. So I've got an 8-pound pork butt, and I also have an 8-pound brisket. We'll start with the pork butt. The only thing I'm doing different between the 2 pieces of meat is basically I'm scoring the fat side of that pork butt. There's a couple reasons for that. I like the way it looks as it cooks. It makes the fat on top a little bit more crispier than it would be if it wasn't scored, and it also allows the opportunity for the seasonings to actually penetrate in underneath the fat cap. If you don't score it, the seasoning kind of sits on top of the fat, and a lot of times on this particular cut of meat, a lot of people disregard, including myself, will disregard the fat because it's just such a big chunk of fat. But when you score it, it shrinks a little bit. The little squares shrink. You'll see it as I cook it here. It shrinks the fat down, and it actually makes it kind of somewhat crispy. It's actually enjoyable to a certain extent. So I've been scoring it for maybe a year or so, and it just a better way of cooking it. Now with the brisket here, this is a flat only. There's no point to it. I know they sell these a lot of times in the stores. I'm not sure what they do at the point, but a lot of people prefer the flat just because it's leaner than the point. I like the whole brisket, but that's a whole different type of cook, at least when it comes to time. And I like a fattier piece of meat, and that's what that point gives. But for now, the flat will work. I've got a lot of people that are wanting to give it a try. So the meat's on the grill now, and the coals in the firebox are in pretty good shape here. The initial burn looks good. I'm just flattening out the coals now. I'm getting ready to put in my normal 3-stick method here. I usually put 2 sticks on both sides, and then have a gap in between both sticks, and then I run a diagonal stick across the top.
I heard it's good for airflow, to keep the air moving from the outside to the inside of the smoker box. Okay, here we are about 3 hours from the time I put the meat on the grill. It's about 8:30 in the morning. The smoker's running about 300 on the fire end of the grill and about 250 on the other, so it's giving me about a 275 in the middle, about where that point of that brisket's at. So looking at the meat for the first time, I've stoked the fire maybe 3 times since I started, so just putting 3 pieces of wood on at a time, and this is my first look at the meat. You can see the brisket's on the top. The right side of the brisket towards the fire is a little darker than the back side. It's mainly because of the way the shape of the meat is. Smoke will have a tendency to go over the top of the meat, and it doesn't have the tendency to go actually back down over the back side of the meat. So if you can kind of ramp it up from the fire side to the smokestack side, that's ideal. In this situation, I'm just switching them around, so I'll move the non-darkened part of the brisket to the fire side, and over a period of 2 or 3 hours, that should do the job. Now I'm checking about every hour and a half now, so I'm putting 3 sticks of firewood on every 45 minutes. So this is my second series of sticks since my last check. You can see it's coming along a lot better. That side that wasn't as dark as the other side has darkened up a little bit. We'll get that a little bit darker as we continue to cook. Pork butt's just turning along at the bottom. The cold day it was this morning is now a flat, gorgeous day. It's close to 50 degrees and the sun is shining, so it's making it a great day to barbecue. Actually, here I am with my 3-stick method. Got the smoker actually putting out a good, decent smoke. We don't want to go too smoky. We want more of a bluish, clear smoke. A lot of times you'll get that white smoke when you're starting new splits on the fire in the firebox. So I think it's about noon or so, and I'm reaching temperatures of 153 and 156. I think 156 is on the pork butt. The grill's holding about 225. Now my fire did get down a little lower than I wanted, as you saw a few seconds ago. Don't really want to get so low that you don't see a log in there, but it happens, and when it does, I just put new ones on it and start to right back up again. I'm actually spritzing with a water vinegar 50-50 mix just to keep the outside from getting too dry. What I also did here, it's about 1:30. What I did here was I had to prop up that brisket a little bit to get that puddling on top to go away. So I just took a little split and threw it underneath the brisket. That kind of got it up high enough where the juices would fall off the sides of it. So we're about 3 o'clock right now. The internal temperatures of these pieces of meat, 161, 170. That pork butt's 170. I'd like to see them both at 170, but my wife and I both have things to do. This is what I normally do. I'm getting ready to wrap this meat. So the pork butt's going to get wrapped, and so is the brisket. I'm pretty much done with the smoker for the most part. I just got to finish the cook. The reason I'm done with the smoker, there's only so much smoke that this meat can take. At this temperature, I want to make sure I don't dry it out, so that's why I wrap it. Now, a lot of guys will wrap it up and put it back in the smoker. I don't. I put it in the oven. I set it in the oven. I set the temperature for 250, and I want the oven just consistently cook this thing the remainder of the time. There's actually no purpose to keep it on a grill at this point, other than just to finish the cook and provide the heat that it needs to do that. So I simply just shut down the smoker. I put it in the oven. I still use the same thermometers that are in the meat outside the oven there, so nothing changes there. It's just an easier way to finish the cook, and when you got a smoker like I got, you pretty much got to be here 24/7 with it. When you go put it in the oven, you can kind of sneak away and do things that you need to get done, and that's what my wife and I are getting ready to go do. Both these pieces of meat likely probably have a couple of hours left. Now I did use some vegetable oil for the brisket. I didn't have any beef tallow to kind of moisten inside the package, and then I used just Spritz to put the pork butt in the foil. So after 9.5 hours on the smoker, 2 hours in the oven, and an hour to cool, we are done. Here's the pork butt. I'm using 2 forks to pull this. Keep in mind, I only used, for both these pieces of meat, I only used salt pepper, and garlic. I use olive oil as a binder to make sure the seasoning would stick. That's all I used on these. The look is phenomenal. The bark is great. There's a great smoke ring inside. I'm very pleased with the pork butt. Now the brisket, this part of the brisket was a little drier than the rest of it. Pretty typical. The smaller parts dry out more than obviously the big parts. But the color was great. It was extremely juicy. Smoke ring was good. No complaints here at all from anyone that ate any of this meat. Well, I hope you learned something. Maybe you got a tip or two. Give it a try. You can't beat it. Pork butt and brisket, phenomenal pieces of meat. Once again, if you like these types of videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. Also share with friends and family. And like I always say, I appreciate you spending time with the Home Pro Hero.